Okay, and welcome, believe it or not, to our 22nd Shiur. It's actually more with all the other exciting things that we did, and a very exciting welcome back. And of course, we're going to start our Shiur with the first two pillars of Tefillah and Tzedakah. We hope everyone's already davened, like mentioned. And then we'll go into the third pillar, Torah. Okay, so let's begin first of all with today's Sefira. So Omer, it's already the 38th day of the Omer, and that is Hayoim Shloishim Ushmeina Yamim Sheheim Chamisha Shavuos Ushloisha Yamim LaOmer. I hope I got that right. Harachaman Huyachazir Lanu Avodas Beis Hamikdash B'Mkayma B'Mheinu B'Meinu Amin Sela. And today's Sefira would be Tiferes Sheh. Okay, now I'm going to use again my very dear, precious teacher's Tehillim, Rabbi Goldstein, who needs a absolute refuah shalema. Chaim Levi ben Chana. Come to me in a moment. Okay. Anyways, let's say together, Lam Natzeh for him and all the other Yidden that need refuah shalema and all other types of Yeshuas. And as we slowly getting out of this Karunchki mess, we don't want to go back to normal. We have to have a new, every down, right? We always learned that every setback is to go even further. And that was one of the lessons of the bow and arrow. The lower you fall, the further you go. So, of course, the idea not to get back to normal. We want a new normal. We want a better world as we come out to a much better world. Well, we hope Mashiach better come ASAP. Regardless, we have to take new achlotas as we get back to the shuls, as we get back to our schools, that we're going to learn in a new, beautiful way, coming back to a new, beautiful world. Okay, let's say together, Lam Natzeh, and straight into today's subject. Of course, we have a special story, part 1 and 2. It's quite a long story, an exciting story, and the raffles. Let's get to one thing at a time. Lam Natzeh, Yach Mizbar LeDavid, Yancha Dinah, B'Yayim Tzara. Yisagevcha Shem Elohei Yaakov Yishlach Ezrecha Mikaydesh Umitzion Yisadeka Yizkar Kol Min Chaysecha Ve'oilascha Yidash Nesela Yiten Lecha Kilvavecha V'chalatzascha Yemalei Neranana Bishu Asecha Uveshem Eloheinu Nidgail Yemale Adinai Kal Nishalei Secha Ata Yadaiti Ki Haishia Adinai Meshichai Ya'anehu Mishmei Kocha Yebigivurai Yeisha Yeminai Eilev Arechev V'eilev Asusim Va'anachnu B'Shem Adinai Eloheinu Nazkir Eimacharu V'nafalu V'anachnu kamnu v'nis oidad adinoi Yeshia hamelech yaneinu v'yoyin kareinu v'tach ask yidad soymil fanecha adinoi Eloheinu v'Elohei avoseinu sheyabavne beis hamikdash v'meinu v'yameinu v'seichel keinu v'soida secha. We asked the Eibishter to give a chelik, our chelik in the Torah, which we're going to find out today what that means, and of course that he built the beis hamikdash. And giving tzedakah, gedeilah tzedakah, shemakareves es hagiula. Okay, so straight into today's topic, which is as we climb, we're already into the 6th week. We're already finished 5 weeks, and already now it's 5 weeks and 3 days. That means we began the 6th of the 7 weeks. Very exciting. We're about to receive the Torah like never before. Never like this in 3,332 years, I think that is, since the Torah has been given. But each year, because we keep receiving it, so that's why Matan Torah each year is different, because now we're already, since the Torah was given, we've been doing 3,332 years of Torah and mitzvahs. That means every year when we receive the Torah, and we're not just celebrating a piece of history. In the Megillah we say, these days are remembered, and not only remembered, but nasim, they're done again. We're not like other holidays, other lahavdil when it comes to Goyish holidays. Oh, this is a memorial for this. We're remembering this. We're commemorating blah, blah, blah. We're not commemorating nothing. We're actually re-experiencing it. So when Matan Torah comes, we're actually re-experiencing that Matan Torah, that giving of the Torah, And that's why the wish from one chassid to another, from one yid to another, is Kabbalah's HaTorah b'simcha b'pinimis. May you receive the Torah with a happiness, and it should be inside a real acceptance, a deep acceptance. And it's because we have to receive it again. And of course, the Torah this year will not be given without you, the children, because of course, that the Torah was only given on one condition. Hashem said, I'm not giving you such a precious treasure without a guarantor. No one gives out without any good security and insurance to give out such a precious, precious gift. In fact, the most precious gift on earth. So, of course, as we know, it's the children. Hashem did not accept the Nevi'im, did not accept the teachers, did not accept the adults, the mommies, the bubbies, the Zaydis. No, that's not a guarantee that Torah will be kept. Well, but they'll learn Torah all day, the Zaydis. No, not a good guarantee. Oh, the children. Now I'm happy. So let's find out a little bit more about the Torah. And it's important to understand. Okay, I'll get to that soon. Let us do today's Sefer HaMitzvahs and dive into it. We do have 2 raffles once again for our Mesiv B'Nas raffle. And of course, number 2 is our weekly raffle for the Shiurim. As you know, there are questions online. If you're not sure still how to get to that, that is on ChabadYouth.org/virtual. And there you see the link to this. I hope you have it by now. And the questions. If you answer the questions, you go into the raffle. So that's why one of my papers say Shiur 21 about Lag BaOmer, and one of my bags say Parshas Emer, because that's for the Mesiv and B'Nas. Beginning with the first question, which is online, and of course that is, what's today's Sefer HaMitzvah? A very, very special mitzvah is that when you set a slave free, sometimes it's a bit hard, like, oh, you had all this help for so many years and now you have to set him free. We're talking about a Yiddish slave. So you don't just say, okay, you can go now, get out of here. No. Since it's another Yid, he's not Chas v'Shalom even allowed to be treated like a slave, as we learned in the previous mitzvahs. So even the way he goes, you don't say, okay, now you're free now. He's not your slave. He was just working for you. He's a prince, just like you. He's also a son of Hashem. And therefore, the way you let him go is with massive ceremony, and you're supposed to give him presents. He's not allowed to leave empty-handed. You're required to give him special presents as he goes with a special, beautiful goodbye party from your sheep, you have to give him some from your field and from your sheep, etc., etc. Okay, that's today's mitzvah. And today's topic, Torah. We're about to get the most precious treasure. How do we deal with it? And here goes. Every single Yid. Now, I'll get to that. Who does this apply to? We'll get to that in a moment. But every single Yid needs to learn Torah. What about a poor person? He doesn't have time to learn Torah because he doesn't have a normal job. He has to run from house to house. He has to run from job to job to see if anyone wants to. What about a rich man that has so many companies he's trying to get run his old companies? He has little time for Torah. Says that every single Yid, rich or poor, whether he's complete and healthy or he has a lot of pain, even a man that has a wife and so many kids and so busy, everyone needs to set time to learn Torah. The holy pasuk tells us, the Malach told you, Yeshua, v'higisa by yoima v'layla. You should learn it. You should be all involved in it day and night. As we say also in Shema, v'dibarta bam, you should speak these words, which is talking about also Torah. When you lie down, it's obviously also talking about Shema, but also about Talmud Torah at day and at night. So who was exempt from learning Torah? Was the next question. A rich man who has lots of business to take care of? Or a poor man who needs to collect? No one's exempt. Every Yid is chayiv. In fact, a beautiful piece of Pirkei Avos is that someone who keeps the Torah out of poorness will be able to keep the Torah out of richness. In other words, that if you're poor and you really don't have time to learn Torah because you're busy trying to collect and make sure your family has some food to eat, but you make time to keep Torah, so it says anyone that keeps the Torah from out of poorness will end up, Hashem will give him a bracha and be able to keep the Torah out of richness. And chas v'shalom, the opposite. Anyone who stops learning Torah because he's too rich will end up stop learning Torah because he's too poor, and Hashem will have to now start collecting and he'll be busy for the wrong reasons. So Torah is not the distraction, but the attraction. That's what gives us all these brachas, and everything comes through Torah. That, in fact, is a Yid whole life. And the best time, of course, to do Torah is right after you daven. The best thing for, obviously in yeshiva, it's easy. It's part of your schedule. You go davening straight to learning, and that's how you're supposed to do it. But even an adult, before running to work, after he davens, he should spend some time with Hashem. Now, what about a child? A child's technically potter from all mitzvahs, right? So does a child have to learn Torah? Are children exempt from learning Torah? Well, technically a child, you're right, a child that's under bar bas mitzvah doesn't have any mitzvahs. But there's actually a mitzvah on the parent who remembers which pasuk says, as we say this every day, at least twice a day, right? Right? We have to, you teach this to your children. So it's a mitzvah. One of the 6 mitzvahs is that a father should teach his son Torah. From when? When does that start? So here's actually the beautiful first 2 psukim. This is brought down already in the beginning of the Poskim, that when do you start teaching? So it says, when a child, listen to this, when a child is able to start uttering his first words, speaking his first words, his father already teaches him the 2 beautiful psukim of, you got it, Torah tziva lanu Moshe Moshe Kilas Yaakov and Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. So the first of the 12 psukim are actually all the way from the beginning, Poskim, that as soon as a kid starts babbling and is able to get out some words, mama, and give me food right now and toys, all right. You're also supposed to you teach him Torah and Shema. What about girls? That's a good question, because technically girls are potter from Talmud Torah, and they have their own special shlichus. However, as we're about to learn that what is the best Torah a person should begin with. I think I'm skipping a question. We'll get back to the other one in a moment. So the answer for, of course, are children exempt from learning Torah? Well, technically children are exempt, but their fathers are required, is a mitzvah for the father to teach a Torah, because you can't expect the kid to all of a sudden become bar and bas mitzvah and all of a sudden know what to do. So education has to start from younger. Remember what Hashem told about the children? When will I give the Torah? If the children accept it. Now, usually there's a misconception. A misconception means a wrong thought. People think, why did Hashem want the children? And this is part of the answer. Because if all the adults know Torah and the children don't know Torah, what's going to happen? Very nice. The children will slowly grow up. The adults will grow even older. The adults will all pass away eventually in their right time. And then now you have a whole new generation that never learned Torah. They were always relying on the older. There's rabbis, there's teachers. Don't worry. Judaism's taken care of. All the adults, we'll just ask the rabbi and he'll tell us what to do. What happens when everyone passes away? And there's a whole new generation that no one knows what to do. The whole Chas v'Shalom Yiddishkeit could be forgotten. So that's one of the reasons that Hashem says, no, that's not a guarantee. If there's an Rabbanim and there's teachers and there's Zaydis that have learned Torah all day, that's not a guarantee that Yiddishkeit will continue. Because if the children don't know Torah, then that's where the line will stop. They'll know Torah, they'll get older, they'll pass away, and then there'll be nothing left. And that's why the Jewish enemy, every time they wanted to destroy Judaism, what is the first thing they did? They tried to close schools because they knew, okay, the old people, forget it. They're already doing this for 50 years. It's going to be very hard to stop the old people from learning Torah. So you know what? Many times the laws, even in Russia, the law wasn't against learning Torah. It was against Jewish schools because they said, why should we fight with the adults? The rabbis with the old white beards, the parents, they've been brought up for the last 30 years like this. It's going to be very hard to fight them. So we'll have patience. We'll say, you know what? You guys can just do what you want to do at home, but no Jewish schools. What's going to eventually happen? And Rahman al-Islam, in a way, they were quite successful in the beginning. There are millions of Jews right now in Russia, uneducated. Baruch Hashem, today there are hundreds of Chabad houses in Russia. But for a large part, that's exactly what they aimed for. They said, look, you do Yiddishkeit, no problem. We'll send them all to Goyish schools. By the time a kid grows up without Torah, he's not interested. It's very hard to come back to Torah. So that's one of the reasons where we say, of course, if there's no children, and the enemies of the Yidden know this, in every country, by the way. Even in modern times, there are many people that try to fight against yeshivas. They're till today, by the way, because they know This is the best form of anti-Semitism. Instead of having to fight Yidden and having to beat them up, like get arrested, or have to do this and then, have a very simple plan. Let's have some patience. We'll say, hey, all kids, why don't you become better educated? Why don't you have a better schooling? We just want to help you out. We just want you to be better educated. You're already educated. We want even you better. We want to give you the best chance. And meanwhile, chas v'shalom, slowly the whole Torah could be forgotten and the whole Judaism could be forgotten. So don't fall for that trap. That's one part. But the truth is, I'll tell you, my dear children, it's not just, teach the children now, because if you teach the children now, they'll know later. See, that's a misconception. That's a mistake. People think that, only if I teach you Torah now, so when you grow up and you're chayiv and mitzvahs, you'll know what to do. It's that today Yiddishkeit relies on children. Do you remember we spoke about this tons of times? What does Hashem say in Tehillim? My whole world stands on the mouth of children. It's not that because if you teach children now, so Judaism will be secured in the future, in a long time, when all the kids grow up, we'll still have Yiddishkeit. No, right now, as we're about to see, how precious, just how precious children's Torah learning is. Okay. So, continuing on. We're about to learn that now. That's our next question. For what type of mitzvah do we stop children's learning? Do you know the answer? No mitzvah. There is nothing more important than children's learning. Yes, you heard that right. We wouldn't even stop if the Beis HaMikdash just came down. I'm looking, hopefully, Be'ez Hashem, it comes down right now and say, "Oi, guys, I just saw the Beis HaMikdash come out. Guys, we're going to stop our learning now. Let's run, because if we all do this together, the Beis HaMikdash will be finished being built so much quicker." Actually, they'll say, "Hey, everyone come build the Beis HaMikdash, but anyone teaching children now, don't come, because that is more important." Did you hear what I just said? Could you believe it? Could you believe it? The Beis HaMikdash is waiting to be built. It comes out from Shemayim. There's a few last parts that had to be built. Guys, hurry. The faster we all get involved, the faster we'll be finished. And I say, but the children, no. You guys, we have a more important job than you. Of course, for you. Of course, the only time it's brought down in halacha, the only time we stop the learning is Erev Shabbos and Erev Yom Tov, to be able to prepare for Shabbos and Yom Tov. But otherwise, you should not stop any children's Torah learning. That's how important it is. Okay, and that would be obviously the next question. For which mitzvah do we stop? And the answer is no mitzvah, really. If you want to write in brackets to be a little bit, show you really know, besides to prepare for Shabbos and Yom Tov. Now, what type of learning should a Yid start with? Well, actually, you should start with the most practical part of learning. In other words, halacha, right? The first thing you should do is know actual halacha. So that's why that's kind of the most important thing a Yid should be learning, because you have to know what to do. And getting back to my question, what about girls? Well, girls also need to know exactly what halachas they need to know. Now, it so happens to be that most mitzvahs girls are actually chayiv in, okay? Every mitzvah lo yisasa. There are 365, more than half of the mitzvahs are lo yisasa. Girls are chayiv in practically all the lo yisasas. Of course, some are not for me or for girls, because they're for kohanim, they're for kings. So we're not talking about necessarily every mitzvah, but every lo yisasa that relates to a man relates to a woman. A regular man relates to a regular woman. So that's already more than half. Then also, there's many mitzvahs, all Shabbos and Yom Tov mitzvahs a lady has to know. So really, women have to know about most mitzvahs, and we are all responsible to learn about those mitzvahs. So technically, there's a lot of things that also ladies have to know. And in fact, the Rebbe actually once brought down in a Maimer that Chassidus, for sure, a lady has to know, because one of the two main mitzvahs, the two main mitzvahs that are steady mitzvahs, if you did Chadon, you'll know this, loving Hashem and fearing Hashem. That everyone has. And that everyone needs. It's actually a mitzvah, what we call mitzvah tmidus. When does that mitzvah? In the morning? We don't have to love Hashem. In the morning? No, actually, every moment of the day. And Chassidus helps you love Hashem and have Yirah Shamayim. So Okay, so the next question was, so the first question was, what should you start with? You should start with the practical halachas. So because every year has to know how to behave. And the Rebbe actually had to complain for a long time because a lot of yeshivas were not learning Shulchan Aruch. You heard, right? They were just learning Gemara and all the Mefarshim, and they would spend most of the day on it. But when it came to practical halacha, a lot of yeshivas were not even learning it. You could hear Sichos, the Rebbe's talks in the beginning of his Nesiyas when he became Rebbe, and having to really talk about this a lot. The yeshivas, now we're not talking about Chabad yeshivas, we're talking about general yeshivas, need to learn a lot more Shulchan Aruch because people they know every piece of Gemara, but they have no idea how to actually behave. So that's the first type of learning that's kind of most important. But there are 4 parts to the Torah. Pshat, you'll see that in our questions. Pshat means the simple meaning. Remez means the other things that it hints to. There's drush, all the madrashim and things that we can learn from it. And then there's soy, the secrets of the Torah. There are 4 parts of the Torah. The simple halachas, then what it hints to, and the midrashim, and of course, in the secrets of the Torah. Eventually, every yid, the Alter Rebbe says, that every yid will have to learn all of it. And if he's too lazy and he misses that one part of learning, his neshama will have to come back again and again until he learns every part of the Torah, including the secrets of the Torah, including Soicha B'Torah, what Rashbi, Rav Shiur Bar Yochai revealed. Of course, today that's through Chassidus. Okay, so to that question, you can tick off all those boxes. What part must a yid learn? Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Soy. Yes. Which mitzvah is Torah equal to? Do you know the answer? You say this every single day.
A lot.
V'salmid Torah.
All of them.
Keneged Kula. Learning Torah is like you did. The preciousness of learning Torah is so powerful. It's as if you learned. You did all 613, all 613 mitzvahs. So you could, even though you're not a Kohen and you're not a Levi and you don't live in Eretz Yisrael, you can still do all 613 mitzvahs because one that learns Torah, it says it is equal to all the 613 mitzvahs. The way to learn Torah is brought down that you should actually say it in a voice, verbally. Say it with your words. That is the best way because, first of all, you need to get your whole body involved in Torah. Also, the memory will be, it's brought down halacha, not just a practical piece of advice. Actually, in halacha, that you should hear what you're learning. It stays in your mind a lot longer and a lot stronger. Now, just to finish off something really beautiful. There were 3 crowns. Yes? The crown of Kahuna, the crown of kingship. There's the crown of priesthood, Kahuna, Keser Malchus, Keser Kahuna, and Keser Torah. Now, Keser Kahuna, the crown of priesthood, who is that given to? Aaron and his family. Keser Malchus, the crown of kingship, who is that given to? David and his family. Who was the crown of Torah given to? That is available for every single yid. And anyone that wants to come, what do we say in the first pasuk? Ma'irasha kihilas Yaakov. It's a inheritance. Just how hard do you have to work to get an inheritance? You know what inheritance means? It means when a parent has property, they bequeath it. 2 big words. Okay, they give it. So when a parent passes away, so you inherit. As a child, you inherit this. Not always does it have to be passing away, but as children, we inherit things from our parents. Inherit kind of gets things from our parents. How hard do you have to work to inherit something? That 0. You just have to be a child. So if you're part of Kihilas Yaakov, if you're part of the community, a Yid, then automatically you are connected to Torah. Anyone could come and take the Torah. So when people come to my house and say, wow, Rabbi Lipsky, you have so many Sfarim. I say, they're not mine. They're all of ours. They're yours. This library belongs to the Jewish people. Not just, oh, you're a rabbi. Wow, the Torah, you're like a Torah belongs to you. It belongs. This is all of us. This is our life, our Torah. Now, you might think that, oh, okay, very nice. I have Keser Torah. But imagine I had the Keser Kahuna and Keser Malchus. Those are surely greater than Keser Torah. The Torah says, no. That the crown of Torah is greater than even the crown of kahuna and even the crown of melucha, of kingship. Okay, and that brings us to a basic close. Now, of course, Torah, like all special things that we have a special bracha. In fact, it has 3 special brachas, right? We say, Al Divrei Soida, Bahar Evna, and Asher Bachar Banu. And the first one is a bracha on the actual mitzvah. Thank you, Hashem Asher Kiddushanim says it's Vanu Al Divrei Soida. We have, like, just like every mitzvah, we have a mitzvah to learn Torah. That's why, by the way, we didn't right away say some Torah. Just like when you make a bracha, you have to eat the food right away, or when you make a bracha on lulav, you have to shake it right away. So that's why when we make the brachas of Torah, we're right away going to say a piece of the written Torah, Yivarach Hashem Yishmerecha, so that's from the written Torah, and a piece of Torah Shabbal Peh, Elu Dvarim. And of course, the reason why we chose that first was to give brachas to all the Yidden, and of course, in the Torah Shabbal Peh, where we say Talmud Torah Kneged Kulam. The second bracha is a request from Hashem that we should continue to enjoy the Torah, and it shouldn't just be like a burden, a mitzvah I have to do, but v'harevna, it should be sweet for me. And not only that, it should be so sweet that I should be able to easily pass it on to my children, and they should see how sweet it is. Right? Our children, and their children. And of course, the third bracha is almost like a thank you, Hashem. Asher Bachar Banu. How lucky we are to receive the Torah. And and it shows us to be your lucky people, to receive your special Torah. And of course, you cannot actually learn Torah before you say these brachas. So when I have sometimes kids running, I teach chassidus in the morning, kids running to my class, they jump in and I say, what? If you didn't say brachas, at least you must say, or you're in the morning and you in the mood of reading something, you should have such a taiva to read the Dvar Torah from last night, because you loved it by the Shabbos, but say, I want to see that Vart again. So, put that down. You've got to wait till you actually say brachas of Torah, just like you can't do any mitzvah when I'm making a bracha. You actually must say brachas of Torah before reading anything in Divrei Torah, reading anything holy. So you got to be careful what you're reading in the morning if you're reading before brachas. Truth be told, you shouldn't do anything before brachas, but definitely you're not allowed to learn anything before brachas of Torah. Okay, I'm going to say one short story, and then it's really a longer story, but I think I should just think which story to say, because we have 2 awesome stories. I'll start with the first one, and if we'll see how this, maybe we'll start with the second one, or just use that for next week. Okay, so first of all, for last week's Mesib and Benas, so not this past week, if you made a Mesib Benas yesterday, you could still fill that chart in. So for last week's Mesib Benas, the lucky winner is and it's in my hand, and it is Nasan Wise. Mazel tov. I see your copy come every time to pick up the Mesib Benas. Of course, you can pick it up outside our house, 711 Meadow Street, Unit 711 Meadow Street. And Nasan, mazel tov to you. Exciting. And for last Sunday's questions, last Sunday's cheder, let's see. And drum roll. Okay, the winner for last Sunday is somebody who is in my hand, not literally. Okay. Mazel tov to Shalom Edelman. All right, good on you, boys. And let's go now to our story. We'll start with, like I said, the first one, and we'll see how we go with the second one. Our first story is the importance of not only learning Torah, but learning Torah in the proper way. And the real way to do it, well, we're about to find out. Now, even when he was a young bacher, there's a very, very special mashpia. His job is a choizer, and that means that his job was to repeat all of the Rebbe's sichos and my marim. He had to remember it by heart if it was Shabbos. And he was the choizer, but even as a bacher, he was very, very talented. And he would go to different yeshivas to give sometimes even secret shiurim in Tanya, because in a lot of yeshivas, They didn't allow Tanya Shiurim, Chassidus Shiurim. And he would go to Lakewood, and he would go into the Zal, they would chat, and then a few of them would leave to a secret corner where they would start learning Tanya. Many were fascinated by the Shiur and really got connected to Chassidus. There was one particular student, however, that wasn't so intrigued by this whole Tanya. And he would just try to say, Rabbi Yehuda probably doesn't know. He's so caught up at the Tanya, he probably doesn't know any Gemara. And he would always ask questions to Rabbi Yoel from Gemara. And he actually enjoyed those conversations. But although Rabbi Yoel would always try to convince him to come to the Tanya Shiur, he refused. One day the student was very curious and said, I heard so much about the Rebbe. I would like to go visit the Rebbe. Do you think you could arrange that I could come visit the Rebbe? And Rabbi Yoel said, well, I'm sure we could arrange it. Rabbi Yoel deep down is hoping and thinking that finally the Rebbe could speak to him. And of course, after the Yechidus, this Bacher will surely agree to start learning Chassidus. All right, he said, well, I arranged you a time. It's going to be very late. Yeah, it's fine. I'm used to laying up late. I'm used to learning. I'll bring my Gemara. I'll just wait. And he said it would be closer to midnight on Sunday. So it was. He came and he was waiting. He came about 10 o'clock. After davening, he sat and learned. And finally, it's almost midnight. And he pointed. The secretary motions that it's his turn. He enters the Rebbe's room, and Rabbi Yoel is so nervously excited outside. What's going to happen? What's the Rebbe going to tell him? This guy's finally meeting face to face with the Rebbe. He's going to become a changed person. A minute passed. 10 minutes passed. A long time passed. And finally the door opened. The Bacher marched out, looked at Rabbi Yoel, and gave a polite but very brief, good night. Okay, I got to go back. And that's it. Very short. What did the Rebbe say? He looked a bit agitated a little, but he says, thank you so much. Goodbye. He left. Next time Rabbi Yoel came to yeshiva, the Bacher did not talk to him. And after a while, he stopped seeing the Bacher altogether. No idea what happened. Years passed. One day, Rabbi Yoel was walking down the street and he heard a car beeping. Okay. And Rabbi Yoel turns around and he sees someone beeping at him. He's turning around looking. Who does he know? And this guy's beeping. And he looks in the car and he sees a man he doesn't really recognize. He sees this guy driving his car, and he looks like a taxi driver. And he's like, hey, Rabbi Yoel! And he looks at him like, what? And he says, hey, maybe you want to learn some Tanya? He had long hair, this really funky winter hat. And Rabbi Yoel's trying to understand who this person is. He said, Rabbi Yoel, maybe Taka, we start learning Tanya. This guy hardly looks like a yid. The chvesis. Anyways, Rabbi Yoel's like, Rabbi sir, who are you? This guy with his long hair. And he's like, you don't remember me? Not really, I can't say I do if I want to be honest. And he says, Rabbi Yoel. And he said his name, and Rabbi Yoel, of course. This is years later. Rabbi Yoel almost went to white. And he says, remember, you once, I was the Bacher from Lakewood, and you once took me to Yechidus with the Rebbe? Yes, Rabbi Yoel sort of, yes, I do remember. No, I want to set up a Shiur of Chassidus with you. And, okay, Rabbi Yoel was kind of excited. And Rabbi Yoel sits down, they make up a Shiur the next night, and they come together. Rabbi Yoel sits down, and he says, look, let's make up a name for him. This is Chaim. I'm not going to ask, I'm not going to butt into your business what happened all these years and why you look like you look. I just want to know what happened on that night of the Yechidus? You looked a little bit agitated. I'm about to bump into your business. And tell me what happened at the Yechidus. So the student explained. He said, I'll tell you, I never really wanted to learn Chassidus or even go to the Rebbe, but I had a very, very difficult question in yeshiva. And no one in my yeshiva, not my friends and not my teachers even, were able to give me a good answer. And I heard that the Rebbe was a massive genius, a big Talmud Chacham. So I don't want this whole Rebbe shtick of brachas, but I heard the Rebbe learns a lot of Torah. I said, let me ask the Rebbe. And I walked in, I asked you for that Yechidus, and Baruch Hashem, you arranged it for me. Thank you so much. I came in, and I asked the Rebbe what I thought was a seemingly genius question. It was actually a very good question. But in a moment's time, the Rebbe answered the question. The Rebbe just answered, the Rebbe thought a moment, and the Rebbe answered the question. I was blown away, and I was ready to leave. But then, as I stood up to go, the Rebbe called me back, and the Rebbe said, do you learn Chassidus? So I said, Rebbe, I don't learn Chassidus. Look, I don't really have anything against Chassidus, but it's not for me. I'm doing so. I have to add. I'm so interested in Gemara. I'm interested. I don't have time really for other things. I was doing so well with my Gemara and the Mefarshim. I don't need to change my life. The Rebbe then got quite serious. And the Rebbe said, but Chassidus is extremely important. It leads to Yira Shamayim, something that you need with Torah. The Rebbe said, when someone learns Torah so much, they could forget that it's a Torah of Hashem, and that's what's important. You see, the Rebbe continued. When a yeshiva student does not learn Chassidus, it could happen one day that he'll have a very strong question. And someone will make a nasty, silly remark, and I'll get so offended. And he won't be able to concentrate on what he's learning. He'll be so offended. Oh, this person said this to me. How dare he? And he's going to not want to learn and not be able to concentrate. And when he starts wasting his time, he might do a little Aveira. And then the Rebbe started continuing. And from this Aveira could bring to that Aveira until he totally leaves yeshiva. Okay, at this point, as the Rebbe was elaborating all these Aveiras, this was so out of hand. I didn't see any point of going further. And I told the Rebbe, okay, I hear you. Let me think about it. And I marched out. Of course, I was a bit annoyed what the Rebbe was telling me and his whole story. I felt like a bit of a waste of time. And I marched out. So I marched out that night and I just went home. But a few months later, I was learning again. And I reached a very difficult learning as always. But again, I had a question. I was learning and I came up with this question and it was bothering me. But I said, I'm not going to move until I get the answer. And I worked on it for 3 days. Finally, I came up with such a geschmacke answer. I marched in. It was the middle of lunchtime. I marched into the shul, into the zal, into the learning hall, with such a smile on my face. And I saw 2 students. And I said, I have a question. And they said, wow, it's a good question. But you have to hear my great answer. And I proudly gave my explanation. But they didn't accept it. That's hot. And one of them even made fun of me. That is the stupidest thing I ever heard. Well, that's ridiculous. That was like a stab to my heart. I was so offended. After trying so hard, you say that was ridiculous. And I ran back to my room. I was hurt. Couldn't go back to Zal. And I was just nervous, upset. And I said, you know what? I need some time off. And I went outside and I missed the night Seder. And I did the first Aveira that the Rebbe mentioned. From that night, my life never was the same. I started following exactly the way the Rebbe described it. I went from this Aveira to the next, exactly the way the Rebbe told it. Until I married, Baruch Hashem, I actually married a Yid, but totally not frum. And I never even told my children that we're frum. I hardly even said anything. That they're Jewish, sorry. I never even told them that we're Jewish. One day, my son came home very upset. Daddy, somebody called me a dirty Jew. What's a dirty Jew? Ooh, I didn't know how to answer it. What do I say? I don't even know what to tell him. What's a Yid? I still had somewhere a Gemara in my boxes, but how's that going to happen? Show him a Gemara and say this is a Jew? How would that answer the question? The next day, I was walking, really still upset, didn't know how to answer my son, and I saw a newspaper. It said the Jewish press. I said, oh, Jewish press, maybe I'll get some Jewish information from here. Maybe this is something I could tell my son. And then in one of the advertisements, I saw Fabrengen, big Fabrengen Yutas Kislev coming up. Maybe there I could find the answer. I remembered 770 when I went inside, and I was somewhere in the corner, this big Fabrengen, thousands of Chassidim filling the room. And suddenly I couldn't believe my ears. The Rebbe was Yutas Kislev talking about the importance of Chassidus. And he said that it's important to learn Chassidus, because when you don't learn Chassidus, you can be very, very learned in other parts of the Torah. But if you're missing that Yirah Shemayim without Chassidus, the Rebbe explained, you could lose sight of the godliness, that this is Torah's Hashem, and you start becoming a big shot, and you get offended when people tell you things, and from one Aveda could move to the next. I said, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe, as I walked into 7-7, the Rebbe starts exactly talking about this topic. But what? The Rebbe saw me, and why would he? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just a coincidence. I said, you know what? I'm going to go the next time and get Kaishel Bracha. As I went to Kaishel Bracha, and I'll see, maybe I'll have some sign. When I came face to face with the Rebbe looked at me and broke out with a big smile, and the Rebbe said, no, maybe it's time to start learning Chassidus. I came out of 770, I got into my car, and who do I see? I saw you. And here I am, and now I understand the importance of not only learning Torah, but learning it in the right way. Okay. So, whoop, whoop. Okay. We will continue next week. We have a very, very exciting story next week. And we'll see you then. Don't forget to answer the questions online to get into this week's raffle. Of course, to fill out, if you did the Mesilas Shabbos answers, you can pick up a magazine this Friday. And important, Chevre, we got to start making a massive Tzivos Hashem campaign to make sure every single last child is in Tzivos Hashem. So we're going to work on it this week for some exciting news about Tzivos Hashem, how to get it back involved, the exciting things that you can get. Be in touch. Everyone have a great, great week.